In harmony with our family, in harmony with our community, in harmony with our world, we should all be aging with harmony. Join Erica Sell for thoughts, trends, and tips in the world of aging and senior living. Here's your host, Erica Sell.
And I'm Wade Taylor. I'm co hosting today's premiere episode of Aging with Harmony, joining Erica, your host, to do a little bit of a introduction of the show, tell you a little bit about the mission statement, give you a better feel of the purpose for the show and the intention that is driving Erica's efforts to bring you this great information. And so, Erica, welcome to your show.
Hello, and thank you.
All righty, so we're going to have some fun here over the next hour. We've got a guest coming up shortly. But again, we want to start off with a little bit of an introduction. You know, Erica's got a background in rehabilitation and medical equipment. And so, Erica, I imagine that your world is filled with people in pain and people in need.
Yeah, absolutely. And people in between too who are doing well, but they're fearful about what may be ahead. And that's really why I wanted to create this show too. That I work with so many people every day that could use a little education, support, and sharing of other people's stories to know that they have a ton of options and that there's resources out there for them that make this uncharted territory a little less scary.
All righty, build some awareness, answer some questions. And, you know, the questions I imagine are wide ranging, but also um, presented by several different people because we've got the person that maybe had surgery, maybe had an injury, or as they're aging have some additional needs. But there's also the family of that person, perhaps the children that are responsible for some caretaking activities. And then there's the caretakers themselves, the um, visiting nurses, the residential facilities. So I imagine there's a wide range of people that could benefit from this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And every family and every instance is different. And sometimes the decision making capacity is in different roles in those dynamics of the senior themselves, the adult child, or a care facility. But whoever is kind of in the driver's seat or coordinating some of those decisions, they need support and they need some help and answers. And the support they get will then help the person they're caring for if it's not themselves.
Right, right. So a lot of different players involved, but everybody has the best of intentions, right? And I know that that's a large part of what drives you is your intention to help and do well. And so as you're speaking to these different communities, um, share with us a little bit about your philosophy of dealing with aging and just the different things you've seen as people address that.
Yes. So I think that aging is something that we shouldn't um, avoid because we cannot. And I would love to see more people having an interest, coming into a store like Harmony or talking to a professional or just doing some online research before they have the need. I think American culture almost kind of sweeps uh, death and aging to the side. We don't like to think about it. We don't take it head on. And so if we could um, maybe make it a little less fearful, maybe pull the curtain back a little bit and give people some resources to make that process smoother before they're in crisis mode. That's what I would love to see happen more often. Um, and then the people that are part of that picture, everyone will feel more supported and have a better experience, whether it's them themselves aging or a better experience caring for their loved one. So there's not as much stress on all the parties involved.
Yeah, anything we can do to reduce stress is a good thing. And so let's take a little moment. We're about halfway through this portion of the episode, this segment. Let's take a moment and directly address some of those communities. I want you to speak to the specifics of what you're hoping to bring as with this show as a vehicle, and be aware this is Aging with Harmony, but it's part of a larger media presentation that Erica is driving as she attempts to help everybody in this community. So you're going to find YouTube videos out there that relate to this. A Facebook group is being spun up, so you'll find us on Facebook, social media. This is the podcast portion of the platform. So just be aware there are many parts of Erica's world where she's going to be sharing great information in different facets. But for the podcast itself, Erica, let's speak to each of those groups, just a quick minute, about what you're hoping to bring. So let's start with, I may not be a senior, but I've been injured, and both seniors and we younger injured people needed hip surgery, needed knee surgery. What are you hoping to bring to them?
Information, and for them, it's going to be more equipment and temporary changes, and then also the traditional and alternative medicines. There's so much information out there, and there's so many different specialties that if you're not in the industry, you're not around this every day, you probably don't know that it exists. And that's from an acute situation all the way up the ladder to just how we're going to age and how we're dealing with a chronic issue. So for them, the latest in technologies that are out there, the latest in equipment that's out there, and the latest in treatment and different modalities that the physicians are seeing. Also, there's going to be a piece, the financial pieces, and for them it would probably be insurances and health savings accounts and different financial pieces that might play a role in their specific journey.
Okay, so you're going to bring awareness to them about all that. And then, as I mentioned, that overlaps with our next group, which is mostly focused on seniors. And, they may be having the hip replacement not because of a rugby game, but because it just wears out over time. But even if they aren't dealing with an acute situation, there are just the lessening of some capacities as we age, and many of them want to live at home as long as possible. So the concept is aging in place. Can you speak to us briefly about what you're hoping to make that community aware of with the show? We've got about 3 minutes left in this segment.
Yeah, so that community is probably the community that I work with the most and focus on the most. And it's aging in place. It's also successful aging. And what are all of the components that we can implement to create a successful aging process? And there's our physical, which we get really involved with modifying our spaces and using adaptive equipment to avoid having any injury or avoid having bigger issues happen, or to return to independence and return to self-decision making. And then there's financial aspects again, setting up things that you may not know exist to make sure that you're able to handle all of your world when you're maybe incapacitated or when a significant other passes away. So there's a lot of cogs in that wheel. So successful aging and all of the components that go with it, not just aging in place and modifying the space and the equipment, which is what we do every day, but I have so many people in my network that help my clients in a multitude of other ways. And I want to share that information with everybody and make sure everyone knows their choices.
All right. Now, there are two other groups that we mentioned involved, and you just kind of wrapped up speaking about people in the profession. So I know part of the show is going to be giving them direct information. If you're a caregiver, if you work at a facility, if you work at in-home, you're going to give some tips for that, as well as that child's or spouse or relative that's a caregiver just in an unpaid situation, I
Yeah.
imagine that same information will be useful for them, and then
Mhm.
also for that child's spouse, giving them some context. So those are the types of information you're going to be bringing to those groups. We just have a minute left, so quickly now share with us, who are you going to bring on as guests? What kinds of people?
A diverse bunch of people from the medical community, from those serving the aging population, and for those who are the seniors themselves or the caregivers themselves. I think story sharing does a lot to paint a picture and to lend support. So I want to make sure we hear from all people who are a part of this journey.
Alrighty, because there are, like we said, so many moving pieces. There's so many things involved, but there's also so many people involved. And they each have their own unique perspective. You're bringing them all together in a community. And myself and Erica hope that this podcast, this platform, gives you a chance to get some great information, but also recognize that you're not alone, right? That this is a community that you and all of us are part of.
That's right.
And your community is who we're hoping to serve here on Aging with Harmony. We hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a mission statement of why Eric is doing the show. And we hope you will stay tuned as we share a lot of great information on every upcoming episode.